Hey guys! So May has ended and it's June, which is just weird to think about how fast this year is going by. Especially when you consider the fact that I only read 3 books in May, which isn't too bad, but it's definitely the least amount so far this year. Or rather, I finished 3 books in May. The first book that I read was Cinnamon by Neil Gaiman, and this is a republication with a new illustrator, and it was a story unfamiliar to me, so I came across it at the library and decided to check it out. And I liked the story, and the illustrations were alright, but I didn't absolutely love anything about it, so I rated it 3 stars. The next book I finished was one that I had been reading for quite a while, and that is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. I had been reading this one as an ebook, mostly on lunch breaks and little snippets here and there, but towards the end I decided to spend a little bit more time with it and read it more like at an hour at a time. And at that point it went by pretty quickly. I was unfamiliar with what actually happened in the book, though of course I was very familiar with the title and the author herself because they are so well known. And it wasn't until a good chunk into the book that I realized that it was actually a memoir or autobiography. I thought that it was a novel, and I did really like it. I thought it was beautifully written, and towards the beginning I did feel like the voice of the book was a little bit older than the main character was, and after realizing it was an autobiography, it started to make a little bit more sense and feel a little bit more age appropriate, knowing that it was her own story to tell. I ended up rating it 4 stars. And the last book that I finished in May was another one that I had been reading for a while, and that is The Fiery Cross, the 5th book in the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. This is the big book that I had started in March and took a break on in April because I was playing video games the whole month, but I plugged ahead and finished it in May, and I would say it's my least favorite of the series so far, and a lot of the reviews on Goodreads seem to validate my opinions about it because it isn't very plot driven, at least compared to the other books, and it kind of just begins and ends in the same general area. There are a lot of exciting events and near deaths, but nothing that really changes the course of their lives in a major way like each previous book has done. So I rated it 4 stars because I do really enjoy the series and I enjoy the characters and I enjoy reading these books. But this one definitely took the longest to get through. I think it took about 2 months, and the fastest I've ever read through one was Voyager, which I believe is the 3rd book, and I read that one in 8 days. So altogether, I will definitely be continuing on with the series. And speaking of video games, I said in a previous video that May was going to be a video game beating month because I hadn't beat Breath of the Wild yet. And I actually didn't really play it much in May because instead of deciding to start the final battle, I decided to collect all 900 Korok seeds, which are these collectibles with a big prize at the end, and I'm still chipping away at that number. So it might be a while before I actually beat the game. And it ended up being that May continued being kind of a continuation of April in that I was actually able to catch up with all of my TV shows, which was at least a season of Grey's Anatomy and half of a season of Once Upon a Time, and a few episodes of This Is Us, and a few episodes of Jane the Virgin, an episode of Sherlock, and a few episodes of Doctor Who, which I still am a few episodes behind. And I've also gotten very close to being 100% caught up in podcasts, which has taken a lot of time. So overall, May was a really good month for me because I was consuming a lot of stuff, even though it wasn't necessarily books. And I have started my next big book, which is the biography of the Brontes by Juliet Barker. And that is this book here. It is very big. And the interesting thing about this situation is that I first owned the updated version as an ebook, and then I found this at a library book sale and recognized it as being the edition that showed up in an episode of Gilmore Girls, so I had to get this one. But of course, this is the first edition, not the second, so I'm actually reading it as an ebook, and I haven't even opened this one except to compare the table of contents, which looks this, but I don't know what's different really between the first and second editions, so I will just decide whether or not to keep this edition after finishing the second edition. I'm only about 4% in, and I can tell it's gonna take a long time to get through this one. So that was my May in reading and other things. Let me know how your reading is going and what you plan to read next, or if you've read any of these books that I've mentioned. And as always, thank you for watching. Bye.